This episode is brought to you by BigMooseCoffeeCompany.co. Greetings, pals, greetings, and I almost forgot to say pals then. What is that? With 37 episodes down, I almost forgot to say the magic word at the beginning. Outrageous. Pals, greetings. Thank you for listening to another episode of Everything Endurance. I've got to say, I know I gush about this every time, but it's been an absolute privilege over the last few months to be knocking one of these episodes out every week, to once a week get to talk to somebody absolutely awesome and passionate and wonderful who's doing something epic, and to then share that with you. So if you guys out there listening to this are getting 10% of the inspiration out of this that I'm getting from the conversations, then great, we're doing well. So yeah, keep liking, keep sharing, keep spreading the word, and get those suggestions in. Get those suggestions in, and I will go and hunt down those adventurers for you. Today is another one of those guests that I do feel privileged to have spoken to. This is a runner who I first met out in Peru while he was doing the Jungle Ultra a good couple of years ago now. And we didn't know much about this guy, and he was, he hadn't come in cocky, he hadn't come in saying that he was going to do really well. He was just out there to complete, just having a good time. And then all of a sudden he's top 5 podium every day, looking like he's having a whale of a time. And we really witnessed a light bulb moment out there in the middle of the mud of the jungle where he realizes, actually, I might be a bit good at this. The last couple of years then, he's knuckled down, put in the training, and really transitioned from, running for the sheer joy of it to seeing if he can grab some podiums out there. And he's been doing exceptionally well with that, to the point where February this year, he came out with us to the Arctic and did the Ice Ultra and won it outright. Thriving all the way. I believe we mentioned it later in the episode. I don't think I've got a picture of him from that event where he's not grinning or dancing in some way. It's just an absolute pleasure to watch his rise there. And he is now genuinely making that transition into making the thing that he loves and that he's passionate about what he does as a career. So if you're out there listening to this and you're a runner or a cyclist or whatever other kind of adventurer you are, and there's been that itch at the back of your head where you're thinking, maybe I could make that leap, maybe I could make this work, and this could be what I do with my life, then listen to this episode and leech off this guy's enthusiasm, and you'll be well on the way. Also, if you are somebody that's got a very cold race coming up, or you're interested in what it's like to run somewhere like the Arctic, or, if you are one of the runners who've signed up for Beyond the Ultimates Ice Ultra yourself, you're going to get a lot out of this episode too, because we're going to get a bit into the nitty gritty of what really happens when it's minus 30, minus 40 degrees, and you're trying to run across 230 kilometers of the Arctic. I'm not going to bore you for too long. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mr. Simon Dix. Dicksy, how are you doing?
Good morning, Will. I'm well, thanks, and thanks ever so much for having Dicksy on your podcast.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure. I think people are going to pick up on the fact pretty quickly that we've met a few times already. So it's always nice to have a friendly face on the show. Although we are obviously in a very, very odd time. We're going to be talking today about your amazing Ice Ultra win back in February, but doesn't that sit in a really odd place now? That was basically, we were just talking about this before I started recording. That race finished, we all got on planes and came home, and then coronavirus was everything. That's been our entire lives since. So I guess our year kind of started at the beginning of January and ended when you crossed the finish line in the Ice Ultra. But what a great end to the year. That was an amazing moment. How have you been handling the lockdown then? That's a horrible way to come down from a brilliant event like that.
Well, initially it was rather difficult because after the ice, my legs just didn't work, and they didn't work for a couple of weeks. I know. So it was just going out for walks and having all this time to get out and train, but couldn't for that first couple of weeks was probably a bit of a challenge, but. Actually, once the legs came back, and I remember a run that I did, and I had the music on, and I started singing out loud because at that point my legs came back. The pain had gone. My speed was back, and I was just like, "Yes, Dicksy's legs are back." So that was probably about 3 weeks after ice. I was able to start running again, and with all the time off, I essentially sort of put myself straight back into a training plan to really build on the fitness that I'd got up until ice, and obviously had at ice, and then moving forward. So lockdown's been difficult with races being cancelled. 2 races have been cancelled thus far. One was in Snowdonia, and one was in Andorra, which was going to be a 100-mile race through mountains. So I was really looking forward to that, but unfortunately, it's cancelled. Obviously, for the right reasons. We've got to protect everybody and ourselves. So it's completely understandable. We'll see what happens as time goes by.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's easy to feel sorry for yourself, isn't it, when you're watching your plans get cancelled around you? But we know it is for a good reason. Well, I mean, we're going to go right back here, further back than coronavirus. Let's stop talking about that for a while. I want to talk a little bit about your journey towards the Ice Ultra, because I mean, I really do want to talk about that Ice Ultra win, because it was great watching you run out there. You looked like you were having a whale of a time. But where does it sort of begin with you? I know you mentioned earlier that you used to be a personal trainer, right?
Yes, so sort of back in the day, when I was in my 20s, I was a personal trainer, and thoroughly loved it. Loved doing spin classes and coaching people and help people achieve their goals, essentially.
I bet your spin classes were like a fairground. I've seen how chippy you are.
Well, they were nuts, and I love music, so I have my own decks, so I could therefore build my own one-hour play set to exactly how I wanted it, and sort of to keep some of the clientele, sort of men and mainly female. I'd make sure I put tunes in to get some nice people in the class. And I remember I had the Baywatch theme tune came on, but I'd speed it up, so it was a proper sprint track. But thoroughly enjoyed that time, but unfortunately at the time then it wasn't really sort of good financially for a long-term sort of project, I thought. So I then got into the boring corporate world, where I've been ever since. But my running career really sort of started as early as 2012, when my now wife Jessica sent me an email. She was a girlfriend at the time. Sent me an email saying she's just got into the Vienna Marathon. So I thought, I've done fitness coaching, I've done spin classes, I can do a marathon, no problem. So went on the internet, bang, applied for it, and then sent her an email back with my application for the Vienna Marathon.
Oh, brilliant!
So we did that race, Will, and it was the worst 4 hours 23 minutes of my life. I can't tell you how bad it was. Everything hurt. Legs, head, I just didn't want to do it. And after that race, I swore to never, ever, ever run again.
Seriously? I can't imagine that, with having seen the joy you seem to have in just putting one foot in front of another. It's hard to believe there was a time where you were like, no, I'm out, never.
And this is what I find amazing about running, is it's so different for people, and actually you can go from there to where I am today. It's a complete journey, and there's things that have happened along the way that have led me to get to this point today. So 2012, I'm never running again. Unfortunately, my mum then got diagnosed with the form of Parkinson's. So me and my younger brother thought, right, what can we do to generate some money, for the charity? So we thought we'd take on the Marathon des Sables. So that's 6 marathons in 5 days through the desert, yada, yada, yada. So what were we thinking? Will? Silence, you're thinking, what a nutter. So going from never running again to a desert race.
That's a big jump. And I want to touch on that. Vienna, what sort of training are we talking about, having gone into it beforehand?
Great question. So having moved to a location where I was all by myself, I found a training plan on the internet. That said to do a marathon time, which I was targeting, of 3.5 hours. I would have to run minute miles of X. So at that time, being completely uneducated, having no knowledge on anything other than, how to run a race was to go, okay, 7-minute, 29-second miles, let's go. So all my training was just dedicated to that pace. What I now know is you don't do that.
No. That's the problem with a lot of those training plans. They're mathematically, they make sense. You know, they're beautiful Excel spreadsheets sometimes, but they don't they don't work.
They don't
or
work.
They've never worked for me, certainly.
Absolutely, yeah. They don't take on heart rate. They don't look at fatigue, strength conditions. So that's why that went so wrong. It went really wrong. And then the Marathon des Sables, I think what was amazing for me was my baptism into the trail world, where I'm not running on tarmac. I'm not, just going around industrial estates. I'm in a completely wild environment. You have to get from A to B. There's no out, really. You know, you've got to make it. And there was just something inside me that, although it was painful, I absolutely loved it. I loved the extremeness of it. And it was almost like I'd found something which I just connected with, and I could just kept on doing it and doing it and doing it.
That's an amazing feeling.
It was great. I mean, a great bunch of people. And you may remember Dan Reeves, who unfortunately in the jungle had a bad time.
Yeah.
He was one of the lads in our tent. And that's actually how the jungle then came about, was after the desert race. Dan signed up to the jungle before me, sent me the link, said, Dicksy, I'm doing this. Do you fancy it? Watch the video. And yes, get me in.
Yeah, people keep putting you forward for crazy things, don't they?
And that's what that is interesting, because in the trail world there are so many various races, and there's always something bigger, something different to do. And I've seen 100-mile race done now with no food. There's now 200-mile races, which is the new 100-mile race. And I think if you've got kind of the body and the mind and that little bit which doesn't say no, you just say yes.
No. What a fantastic attitude to carry into what you're now looking at developing, which is, a genuine career as a runner.
Yes. Well, that's the plan. And I think only in the jungle on day 4, when I had a very special day that I didn't really know what happened, and I was just running and I just kept taking over people. I was just doing sort of my normal pace. And then before I know it, people said to me, oh, now you're in 4th, now you're in 3rd. And then one guy said to me, now you're in 2nd. And I knew that the guy who was in 1st was Jamie, was really quick. So I thought, okay, I'm happy with 2nd. But something clicked inside of I've never been this high up in an event. I'm letting nobody take this away from me now. And from that moment of going from 3rd to 2nd, something changed inside my brain. And I just went for it. And the video that I'll send you from when I finished on day 4, when I come down the hill and then you'll see the finish line, I'm just going, yes, effing yes. That was just pure happiness. That was raw happiness. I don't know what I've just achieved. I don't know how I've done it, but I've just done it.
I think we've got to put that in context a little bit as well, because you're talking about stage 4 of the Jungle Ultra. And for anyone who doesn't know much about the Beyond the Ultimate Jungle Ultra race, stage 4 is notorious. Absolutely notorious. It is the most technical bit of trail we've thrown into any of our races. It is just up, down, through water, over rocks, ankle deep mud, horribly steep slopes. And that climb at the end that you were talking about coming down from, I've only done that once. In the whole time I've worked there. If there's a reason for me to go up there, I'm gutted, because I know what that hill's like just marching up and down it with the camera kit, let alone doing it as a runner and in a self-sufficient race, carrying all of your kit on the back as well. So most people come out at the end of stage 4 with, they either look like they've been run over and they just want to go and lie down somewhere, or they're just relieved that they've got to the end of it. I don't recall a lot of people coming out at the end of it like, they've just scored the winner in an FA Cup final, but that is exactly who you were in that moment.
Yeah, exactly that. And I remember that hill, it was king of the hill, and so it was timed to be quickest up the hill. And I really enjoy hills. I thoroughly enjoy them, and
even that one,
even that one will. It's madness, because it's just, for me, I think when I get to the top of the hill, right, that's the achievement, and that's how I do my races. I break everything down into little blocks now of, right, what's my achievement that I need to achieve, for this next 5K. Is it getting to the tree? Is it getting up the hill? Is it running down the hill? Because downhill is sometimes often harder than uphill. So yes, I very much do remember that hill, but it was a great hill. And it was after the jungle that I sort of thought to myself, okay, what more can I do with this? Because I'd never had any running coaching. I've never followed a proper plan, that's put down by somebody to say what I should do. So I contacted Shane Benzie, who's a movement specialist, and he got me in. So that was 2018 after the jungle.
Yeah, and anyone who's listened to earlier episodes of the show will know who Shane is. We've got an episode with him, and we're doing another one in a few weeks. He's a very knowledgeable guy.
He is, and I will always remember this comment, and he may do as well if you ask him. He said to me as I was running around the field, "You've learned to run badly really well." So I thought, okay, yeah. I'll take that. But so we started working in 2018 on just sort of changing how I moved, and I guess that's really the building blocks to how you can increase the performance, because there's no point getting, in my view, superly fit if you're not doing it in the most efficient way. So get your form right, get your feet placing in the right place, and start to get the dynamics right. Put into that a very good engine. Actually, then you can really motor on. So Shane was doing my dynamics, and then I contacted Paul Tierney, I think it is.
Paul Tierney, yeah.
Paul Tierney.
You've just been going through our list of podcast guests.
I have not, no. So is he coming up, or have you had him?
We talked to him after he did the Wainwrights.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So a lovely guy. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely brilliant. So he's my running coach. So he did my training plan from November last year, specifically looking at the Ice Ultra. And it was very good for me to actually have something to work to, and very interested also because up until that point, just going out and targeting 20 miles, 25 miles, 30 miles, but no theory to it.
Yeah.
And Paul brought theory to it, which made me realise, okay, there's some theory to it. Let's see how we get on with what's being prescribed. And it wasn't until obviously the Ice Ultra. Well, Will, what I was thinking day after day. I was like,
Wait, you had a similar look on your face on the Ice Ultra to how you were in the jungle. And I remember the conversation after the jungle where we were all hanging around in Pilkapata and saying, Dicksy, you're bloody good at this. You looked as surprised as anyone at the end of each day when you were in good condition. And we kept telling you, no, Dicksy, you're really good at this. And then in the Ice Ultra, you'd gone away, met Paul, obviously. I knew you were getting coached. I didn't realize it was Paul Tierney. You've gone away and put some structure into the coaching and just stepped up a notch. And is that how you felt on the run into the Ice Ultra? Did you come into it thinking, I might be able to do this, I might be able to take the top spot, or did you have your own targets in mind?
So I came in hoping I'd get top three was what I was hoping for. It could have been, so whatever was in that, I would have been extremely happy with. But coming into the event, I felt probably the best I ever felt before, knowing that I've done everything that I've been asked to do. Had a couple of little niggles like everyone does, but at that moment in time, there was nothing I was thinking negative about. So from a physical perspective, I knew my body was working. From a fitness perspective, I knew I had tons of hours and tons of miles in the tank. And I think also a huge part to being successful at running and doing well in it is having that happiness inside of you're on the start line in a beautiful place, and having that positive mental attitude of this is amazing. So yeah, I'm running with smiles when I'm doing it. I'm smiling all the time, and I'm looking around and making sure my head's up. Otherwise Shane will tell me off.
Yeah, I hear a lot about that one. He said I had a particularly heavy head as well, so I needed to be careful with it. Cheers, Shane.
No comment, Shane.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely. I think you've got the physical side that could make you better, and then you've got sort of the mental side and the belief that you can do it. And I only had that at the Ice Ultra. I believed in myself that I could get to that top 3 spot. And I read a book probably last year, and there was a line in it, Will, that said, do you run to complete or do you run to compete? And actually I took that line as the main line from that book, and that again switched my mind to, I want to see how far I can push it and what I can do. And there was a race in where were we? In Wales, around the Gower Peninsula. And it was the first race that I'd done having made that switch from complete to compete. This was before seeing Paul. At the time, I didn't realise, but we're actually racing Beth Pascal and another lady who was the Ironman champion. Sorry, the name forgives me at the moment. God, what's her name?
No, I can't find it.
Anyway, yeah, she won Ironman 3 or 4 times, an amazing athlete. And there was Dicksy running with these 2 athletes for probably about the first 20-ish miles. After that, boom, they were gone. so you could see sort of the difference between true elite and at the point where I was in my running journey. But when I finished that race, I placed 3rd in my category, so I was 3rd male.
Oh, well done.
And again, that was just the mental switch in the mind. And then came Paul, and then came I. So what I've learned is there's not just one thing that can make you better. Actually, it's lots of things that you add into it and makes you rounded and pushes you on.
Yeah, absolutely. And what an amazing feeling that the amount of preparation you've put in there, and you've trained in a very thoughtful and considered way, really. You've noticed, you've looked at the other people around you and saw where the gaps might be, and gone out and done the research to find out, right, how do I take this next step forward? And what an incredible feeling to be towing a start line like you were at the Ice Ultra and genuinely feeling like, yeah, I do feel like I've done myself justice in preparing for this. And it just frees you to be able to really thrive and enjoy that event. And I get it. And I've competed in enough races where I've gone in knowing I overdid the kebabs a little in a couple of months running up to it, and that I'm going to have a terrible time in the last 10 miles of this race. And that's fine. And that's what I've done that day. And I've still thoroughly enjoyed the event and then not been able to walk properly for weeks afterwards. But there's something different when you get to a start line and you just think, oh, holy crap, I think I'm ready for this. And that's where you seem to be at the start of the Ice this year.
Yes, it was. And I can remember each day of the Ice Ultra, and because every day I take myself to that happy place, because that's the happiest place I've been all year. And that first bit of day one, running down the road, hitting the lake, and then thinking, God, when do I take my snowshoes on? When do I put my snowshoes on? Do I take them off? All these questions that you're essentially at the start of, or before the race, you're panicking about, thinking, how do I know when to put my snowshoes on? Answer is, you know when you know.
Yeah. If it's hard to move without them, you need them on. If you don't feel like you need them, then you probably don't. And yeah, I get you. But that's, half of the Ice Ultra seems to be deciding, have I got the right kit on for this particular moment? Because in a race like that, the weather and the conditions change so fast that a lot of it is about keeping that mental alertness and being willing to stop and go through more costume changes than Lady Gaga along the way, just to keep yourself in that sweet spot of not too hot, not too cold, not under too much pressure.
It is difficult. And I remember before, actually, as it was day one and we were in the camp before we set off, I had 3 layers on, and I was chatting to Simon, And we were sort of thinking, do we do 3? Do we do 2? And in the end, we decided to go for 2 layers. So it was essentially one base layer and then an outer layer soft shell jacket.
Yeah.
And that was all I wore. But for me, and I think it's quite important to get across, is everybody's different. So you've got to try these things to really make sure it works for you. But for me, I think the speed I was running at, which wasn't fast, but it was just a consistent speed, meant I could keep my body temperature at a certain level. Therefore, I didn't need to change too much in and out of clothes.
And I think that's absolutely key. I mean, for anyone who's listening to this and has a very cold race coming up, or if you're one of the people signed up for the Ice Ultra next year and you're listening to this for tips, it absolutely is of keeping yourself in that state of balance and being very consistent. So you were saying you weren't, it wasn't that you were desperately quick, but you had the right speed and you kept it going for a long time. And I guess when I did it, the fitness level I had at the time, it was very similar. I had an underlayer on and a base layer rather, and a soft shell jacket over the top, and that was fine for me. There were guys at the back that were coming in maybe 3, 4, 5 hours after me who were in full Arctic style down jackets because they weren't able to move as quickly across the terrain. You really do have to account for that before you go into an event like this. So Yeah, absolutely right. And I think it's when you look at these events and, look at it and think, okay, based on the training you've done or the races you've done previously, it's like working out what sort of time am I going to be on the course for? Then from that, you can be okay, because everybody has their own race and it's brilliant for everybody doing it and getting through it. Making sure you've got the right kit and enough layers, especially in the cold, because it was one point and I made a mistake where I just had base gloves on my hands and my mittens, for some balmy reason, were in my backpack. Yeah. And I remember going from woods then onto a frozen lake, and I was like, God, what's going on with the hands? This feels a bit weird. Kept moving and I kept feeling a little bit more weird, and I knew what was coming. They were getting frostnip because the temperature had plummeted so much on the lake. So I had to take my bag off, faff about trying to get the gloves out of the bag, then trying to get the mittens on sort of partially frozen fingers. You're like, come on, just get on there. So it's little things like that where you've got to make sure your kit is accessible when you need it. I certainly didn't make that mistake again further on during the race. They were always accessible. And it's things like that where you learn very quickly and you don't make the same mistake again because you don't have the time to make mistakes. Yeah. You don't go out of the race on stage 3 because you've lost your waterproof socks. It can be as simple as that. You are self-sufficient. You have to look after every aspect of the race. But what you did there was absolutely right as well. You see people that in these freezing cold temperatures will try and battle on like, oh, my hands feel really cold or my feet feel really cold, but I'm only 3-4K out of the next checkpoint. I'll push on. No, don't. Take care of it before it's a problem, because as you say, when you get out on those lakes, the sudden dip in temperature just from emerging from, and actually you can see in the sort of photo behind you that you've got as your Zoom background, that's about as thick a kind of woodland as we're talking about that you're going to run through. But the difference between emerging from that out onto one of the exposed lakes in terms of temperature is incredible. Like, you really do feel it.
You could be minus 10 difference. I treated it just like if you get a hot spot. I think that's probably a bit harder to deal with in the Arctic than on a normal race. But just treat everything as in, right, I know I've got a problem. I need to change it as quick as I can to make sure it doesn't develop into a bigger problem.
So, as a race, then, I mean, you knew us as a company. You'd been through the jungle, so you knew that we were not scared of throwing some tough bits of trail at people. But how did it live up to your expectations? And I say this as someone who did the Ice Ultra myself, and I'd been like reading stuff about Arctic and Antarctic explorers. Like, I'd got in there ready for it to be what I imagined as the Arctic, like incredible cold and deprivation, and it would be really, really difficult. And you get there and it does have all those aspects to it. It absolutely does. But what I remember from it mainly is that it's just bloody beautiful. The area is just stunning, and that's what took me out of the pain that I was obviously feeling in my legs and stuff at the time. But what had you expected on the run into it, and what did you actually find when you got there?
So the first thing I found was actually what cold is, because there's no place you can go to where you can really feel what that cold is. And first morning where we slept out in the teepees, and when we wake up, you got to roll your bag up, and I didn't have any gloves close to hands, and I think my hands were going cold straight away. And I remember thinking, flipping out, okay, yes, now we're here. This is the cold. But we were incredibly lucky with the weather. I think we had sunshine for the 4 main days. It was just beautiful blue sky and sunshine. So we didn't experience the blizzards and that type of weather, which do I miss? Do I regret not seeing a blizzard?
I see what you mean. And, we have had years on that race where the weather's been really extreme. I get what you mean. Like, we had a really bad, we had gale force winds and like whiteout snow on stage 1 in the year I did it. And I'm really glad I did that. But at the time, if you'd have said I could have pressed a button and stopped that from happening, I'd have pressed it. I'd have hammered that thing. It's intense. But yeah, you did. You had beautiful weather for the race.
We did. There was a couple of times it was cold, and it was also, I remember we had a day where we were sort of in and out of lakes and woodland. So on the lakes, you were not in your snowshoes. In the woodland, you're then trying to go as long as you couldn't, having to put your snowshoes on. And there was one time that I just went straight down, like probably at sort of chest height, because the snow was so deep, and I was effing and blinding, just thinking, flipping out, I just want to get running. I just want to run. But then I just flipped back to, this is why we're here. This is this race. It's unpredictable. You can be on hard packed. You can go around a corner, and a skidoo could have mashed it up, and now you're in soft. It's not a beautiful flat tarmac. This is the course. Yeah. So you just you brush yourself off, and off you go. And I remember day 3, which was the main lake day. Everybody was so excited we could actually start without the snowshoes. Which, yes. I guess if people listening and they're doing this event next year, that whole debate again of when to put them on, when to put them off. When you start a day without them on, it just makes you feel so happy, because you just know, right, you can have a nice run now.
I really didn't mind the snowshoes that much. Maybe I have a weird gait, but I didn't find they affected me all that much. I ended up wearing them about 90% of the time, even at times where I maybe didn't need them. But I thought that would be normal, but it's in the years since, when I've worked alongside the race doing the photography and stuff, that I realized that, people hate them. Absolutely hate them. I do get it. I came out with, some very obviously snowshoe related injuries. But there's only so much snowshoe training you can do when you live in the UK.
Yeah, for certain. And actually, I did a very little bit, and it was much harder because the ground I was doing on was soft and muddy, so snowshoes picked up all the mud.
Of course.
And so I'm just going down this 100-meter stretch, thinking, "Flipping, is this how hard it's going to be in the snowshoes?" And I think obviously when we put them on and we practiced with them over in before the race. And then we ran in them, you realise actually they're not too hard. And then once you get your head around how to run with them, and this was something also that Shane had mentioned to me, was actually, don't try and have your normal running style through the Arctic. You're not going to be able to do it. That's not possible. So let's bring you back down into almost like a bit of a robot, a bit of a machine, where you're keeping your cadence up. And you're keeping your steps moving. You're not overstretching. You're not overreaching. Moved across the terrain in a timely manner. So,
I think that's a very wise way of approaching that kind of terrain. You really have to. Even with the snowshoes on, you're still gonna, sink an inch or two into the top layer of snow as you're moving along, and that is gonna change your gait. It is gonna suck some energy out of your legs. Whatever pace you thought you could do a kilometer in beforehand, it is gonna be slower when you hit the snow. And there's not a lot you can do to prepare for that if you're like us and you come from a country that doesn't have an awful lot of snow for you to train in. But I'd recommend sand. I did 2 half marathons over 2 days on the beach in Bournemouth as my snowshoe training, and that actually helped out a lot. I learned a lot from that. But yeah, difficult to prepare for.
It is, and with the snowshoes, also knowing how to put them on and take them off quickly. So
when you know that if you take your gloves off, you're going to lose the feeling in your fingers in about 5 seconds. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. And those are things that sort of play in your mind is, okay, I no need to put my snowshoes off. Put them on. So let's get to a good place where I can do that. And, I don't want to be sitting and I'm sitting down into the snow. So all these little questions go through your head when you're running and you're racing is, when to do it, how quickly to do it. I'm even thinking, right, 1, 2, 3, bang, down. I'm thinking about it as I'm running, planning it and knowing that almost my hands know what they need to do when they go down there. They're not faffing about trying to find buckles or anything.
I think that kind of preparation is essential in that environment. It absolutely is. You've got to plan it like a little Formula One pit stop for yourself. Like I'm the next time I see an area of snow that looks hard enough for me to stand on for a minute, I am going to stop. I'm going to approach my snowshoes by doing this, this, and this. Then I'm going to grab this bit of food out of this pocket, swap my water bottles. Then I can move on. And I found anyway that I made little checklists for myself when I knew I did need to stop, to make sure you don't do something like move on and leave your poles behind if you're one of the runners that uses those. That happens on every trip, every race. Somebody will do that.
Yes, yeah, and something I also learned was having a bar to eat. It's the right faff trying to peel the wrapper off when you're trying to run. So actually what I learned on the second day onwards was to just get a plastic bag, chop them all up into little bite-sized pieces, then have one bag where I could just dip my hand in, fumble about for about 5 minutes to get one piece out, and then finally get it in. So again, that's a really good tip that I'd recommend to anybody is get a single bag for your day, put your treats and your food in there, bite size, so you're making it simple for yourself to eat. Simplicity is how I look at everything when I'm running, and the ice race is the simplest one you have to get down to, is to make it easy for you, making it easy for yourself to not stress.
Absolutely. Do the stress in the preparation before the race, so you haven't got to go through the stress while you're out there. Did you do the whole bit beforehand where you'd stuck all the snacks you were thinking of taking in a freezer to see if you could eat them while they were solid?
Yes.
Yeah, that's always good fun.
It is. Shot blocks. They were good. Food's also a really interesting point as I'm not a big eater. So I'm really not a big eater, and I read lots of blogs about Ice Ultra and lots of videos, and people saying you'll eat more and more food than what you have at any other events. And for me, actually, it was the same as what I'd eaten in the jungle, although I took more for ice based on what I'd read. Actually, I just ate exactly what I had before. So in the end, I was giving away food because I had too much in my bag.
Well, you certainly didn't look like you were feeling a lack of calories along the way. I guess you'd adapted yourself through your training to working on a low amount of calories.
I think so, Will. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. A lot of my training was in low heart rate zones, so zone 1 and zone 2, which is fat adapted zones. That sort of builds more muscle fibers in your legs. Therefore, you get more oxygen into your legs. Therefore, you can run for faster. You really are combining a lot of beneficial training blocks, by doing zone training. And also, my wife's chocolate cookies, which were, I think we said, about 400 or 500 calories. And that was an afterthought. That was, Will. I remember I was packing my bag and looking at all this food, and as an ultra runner, sometimes it's not really that exciting, is it? It's just the same old, oatmeal bar and what have you. And
yeah, I hear you.
There were these cookies. So I put them in, and I had one a day, and they were rocket fuel. And I was eating one just when Chris met me at the top of the mountain on day 2, and down it went. Off I was down the hill. Brilliant.
Yeah, my thing was shortbread. A shortbread's perfect. If you think about it, it's mainly sugar and fat. And if you put it in the freezer, you'll find yourself, when you take it out, it's almost exactly the same. So it just melts in your mouth. So I'd honestly, about 50% of all the calories I went through while I was doing the Ice Ultra was just Scottish shortbread. I'd have sticks of it tucked in every pocket so I could just fish one out every now and then. I was having a whale of a time.
Oh, it's brilliant, yeah, because you can eat. I guess that's also something else to look at. Although I'm a small eater, because I was on the course for my set time, if your course is going to be longer, you need to consider the additional time you're going to be on there to make sure the food is adequate to the time that you're going to be on the course. So the ice race was the first one that I really planned. I really looked down at the detail and I really looked at everything to see how I can do it. All the races before that, including one that Dan and I turned up to, was a 100-mile race, the Cotswold Way. Just after the jungle, we thought, yeah, we've been to the jungle. We'll just take on a 100-miler. No preparation, no food strategy.
Wow.
Oh yeah, we're just sort of just jogging along, having a merry old time. Neither of us finished, but it was, but it was it was a lesson. If you're going to take on these races, you've got to respect them, and to get the best output from them, you need to look at what you're going to be doing.
The more you've learned before you start the race, the better. Because you're always going to learn some lessons along the way, but try and minimize how much you've got to learn, because you are not going to have much time to do it. You're going to be plenty preoccupied putting one foot in front of the other through the Arctic for 150 miles. Okay, in terms of your training on the run up to that event, what do you think really worked for you? What do you think prepared you best to work in that environment?
The weather in the UK at the time was disgusting. If you remember, it was just constant rain. It was just horrible. So the weather we've had recently is beautiful, and I've seen hundreds of percent more runners than I've ever seen before out running, which is absolutely brilliant. But what we've got to remember is when it gets to winter, we're not always going to be running in these beautiful conditions. So what I do think helped was running in horrible conditions where it was very challenging and the foot placement wasn't flat. It was muddy, it was slippy, it was just, I refer to it as disgusting. It was not enjoyable, the training. But, Paul set me 4 hours to do one day, 6 the next. Then my mind was switched on. That's what I need to do. So heart rate monitor was on, waterproof gear on, all the buffs, and, just having the mind of I need to go out, got to do the time. And actually not running to distance either. I found that really beneficial. So I wasn't running to distance, I was just running to time.
Yeah.
Building up the endurance in the legs. So I think a combination of long, slow runs, back-to-back slow runs, building that up over a number of blocks. So you got a 6-week block, and you can have a bit of a recovery week, and then another block. Over that time, you're increasing your endurance. And your mileage, so that gets the distance in your legs. So heart rate training, time, and disgusting weather prepared me for the Ice Ultra, because when we got there and it was a beautiful sunshine, the body and the brain's thinking, my God, this is beautiful, I'm happy with this. And you can't underestimate the power of the body and brain feeling positive. It can take you through places when you really need it.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the end of stage 1 of the Ice Ultra, I can remember getting into, you remember AXA, those cabins? I remember getting onto one of the bunks in AXA, and at that point, the wind was howling, rattling the windows. It was like a horror film. And I remember lying there and thinking, I don't know if I can do this tomorrow. I honestly don't know if I can go through that again. That was horrendous. And then waking up the next morning, and it was beautiful. It was like that scene behind you there, like you had just blue skies, the wind had gone, everything had quietened down. And I had a jamboree that day. It was a party because I was ready for war. I'd done the same. My training had been winter in the Peak District. So my training had been mud and rain and hail continuously for months. So when the sun actually came out on day 2, I was like, brilliant. This is a holiday. I'm having fun with this one today. And that was a turning point moment for me. It changes everything if your brain is on board with what you're doing.
Yes, 100%. So if you've got bad weather, go out and train in it, and just think, my view is make it as hard as possible in training. So when the race day comes, anything that can happen that's positive that makes it easier for me, great. If not, if it's blowing a gale and it's hammering down with rain, okay, I'm used to that. I can deal with that. I've got the kit that can deal with that. It's not a surprise. And I think the journey I've been over the last couple of years is just really being more prepared and learning more.
In terms of the kit, that's so important as well. You've got to go out there in the horrible, crappy weather where it's raining sideways and you're wishing you'd stayed in bed to know if your kit's going to stand up to the same kind of punishment when you're 3 days deep in a multi-stage ultra. How are you going to know if it's going to cope in that environment if you haven't already been there in it?
That's so true. And take the jungle as an example. All the training that I did for that was pretty much on a flat canal route. No hills, no waters to cross, just nice and flat. So I didn't really test, whether or not any of the kit, did work or didn't work. And touch wood, thankfully, it held up. It was okay. But you're absolutely spot on, for things like the ice, where you need to know you're warm enough and you're going to be, cozy rather than freezing.
Yeah,
test it out. But even then, the problem I had in testing the cold weather gear was it didn't get cold in the UK. So,
no.
You just got to take it, and then you got to take a view when you're there. So, there's lots of things you stress about, and actually, you can't make any decision until you're there. So, take it in your main kit bag. Take the kitchen sink in your main kit bag, and then when you get to the cold at the start of the ice, you've got a day before you race. Just get a feel for it, test it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember what you were saying, that it never gets cold enough in the UK for you to properly train with that kind of cold weather gear. I know it never did in the winter when I was training for it either. So in frustration, I booked myself a couple of really cheap EasyJet flights out to Oslo, thinking I'm going to run in Norway. Like, they'll be cold, they'll have it. And I happened to turn up on a freakishly warm winter day in Norway. So I did 2 days of running where it never got lower than -3. Just great. I'm in Oslo on my own with my running kit, and still had a lovely weekend, but not what I had in mind. Okay, so we've talked there about what worked best for you in your training, what was good preparation. You're someone with a background as a coach as well. What are the mistakes you see people making? I mean, we talked about crappy marathon plans earlier and stuff like that. Where do people fall down? Where did you get it wrong while you were getting it wrong?
Great question. So I think I was getting it wrong by essentially not knowing how to run and just running. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. People can find their way. But when I wanted to make the switch up and see what to do better, I then learned so much about how the body should function. So simple things like how your foot should land. Simple things like not overtraining. And getting that dreaded fatigue where the training you're doing is just making your body more and more tired, and you're not getting any benefit to your training. So I'd say following a standard mileage plan has absolutely zero value. It takes no accountability of your heart rate, what your thresholds are, how long you should be training, and looking at each workout and seeing, okay, what's your cadence from that workout? Is your legs moving at a quick enough pace to ensure that you're going to move quick enough across the terrain that you're looking to do? So there's so much to running, which is not just running. And I remember I was just running. But you've really got to have structure to it. And I'll mention Shane again. He's fantastic at the movement piece, and I look at it as getting the foundation right as how you should move, and then building on from that, a structured training plan gives yourself the best chance at having a successful race, whatever your goal is. That goal can be finishing, or it can be top 10 or top 5. It doesn't matter in any of the BTU events. Your goal is what's most important. That's what I actually really love about BTU is everybody who's there, you've got your own reasons for there, and to finish it is such an achievement. And I do feel for people at the other end of the Ice Ultra, because you're there a lot longer and it's a lot colder and it's a different challenge. So I think they're the heroes from the race, because they're out there longer.
I couldn't agree more with that. Having been in it as a runner and having worked alongside that race sort of 3-4 times now, it's completely different. And that is one of the things that I love about all of the races that I work on, is that everyone has a reason to be there, and it's always different. There's always something different that's driving them forwards, but their experience of it is utterly different as well. And I find it a real privilege. I love being able to watch those different stories unfold and be able to tell those stories. And that's my thing. That's what I really love about the adventure and ultra running scene. But you're absolutely right that there are guys putting in 20, 21 hour performances on stages that the guys at the front are clearing in 6, 7, 8 hours. And for those guys, they have to be immensely tough. That's where their kit bag really does need the kitchen sink in it, because they're going to be out there for such a long time. They've got to be ready to weather that cold for an awfully long time. And that takes a lot of mental resilience. I would say mentally, emotionally, it was an easier experience for me because I'd done the kind of training you're talking about where I was kind of comfortable that I could clear the distance, and I came out of it, not like you, I marched quite a lot of it. I came out of it in 6th place, but it didn't kill me to do that. I only had to dig so deep mentally to get that far. And I knew there were people behind me that were working much harder to get the same medal. So hats off to them.
Yeah, that's it. It's brilliant. And it's great that everybody gets the opportunity to have a go at it. And I know my friend Lee Haswell, who unfortunately had a fall on day one of the ice and broke a rib. I think there's rumours, Will, that he may be back at some point in the future.
Yes, well, he certainly should be.
He should be, and I've sort of said to him, I'll be helping him out 100% as best I can. So at the point he's on the start line in the future, he's going to be prepared by Dicksy, and we're my goal is to get him to that finish line. I know how much he wants it.
Well, there you go. I was going to move on to that. Like, what's the future for Dicksy now? Because what you found yourself in is a position, and I imagine there's quite a lot of runners out there listening to this who've had that thought of, well, people always tell you should do what you love, and I love running and I love being involved in this scene. Can I make this work as my career, as my main thing? And that's sort of the direction you're moving into at the moment, isn't it? Obviously, with the caveat that we're in the middle of a lockdown nightmare at the moment, and everyone's plans have slowed down a little bit. But that's the stage where you are at, having jumped off the back of this win on the Ice Ultra, right?
Yes, it's given me the more belief to see, okay, what further can I do? So I've been talking to Paul over how much further he can push me on. Unfortunately, at this moment in time, I'm suffering from an injury, which I find completely unbelievable, Will, because desert, no issue. Jungle, no issue. Ice, no issue. Walking my dogs to the local park, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds on the lead. One of them got the smell of obviously a very nice smell that he wanted to get his nostrils round. He pulled one way. I went with him, but my hip stayed back. So I've actually got a torn groin of some sort. We've not been able to diagnose it because nobody's been able to really obviously sort of test it.
Yeah, of course.
Mate, so this is my 4th week of not running.
Oh, I heard that sigh there as you said it, mate. You're feeling that.
It's painful, and especially the weather we've got and the fitness level that I was at. I know it's dropping down, but can't control it. It is what it is, and everybody gets injured. It's how we deal with it when it happens. And I've started doing yoga to not only benefit the running, but actually now we're targeting the injury point to help with that. Got a turbo trainer and a bike. And I've got to say, respect to the people who go out on a bike for 5 or 6 hours. It is boring as hell. That on a bike, just biking around. I'm doing it because I have to, but not for 5 or 6 hours, sort of half an hour.
Oh, cheers, Dicksy. You've just lost us every cyclist that was listening. That's it. That's my subscribers gone.
No, kudos to cyclists, because I just couldn't do it. With all the races being cancelled this year, I'm looking to be working with an ultra runner who's he's got great sponsorship from Innovate, Garmin. So I shan't mention his name because we're doing it under the radar to a certain extent. But we're looking to take on a lot of FKTs around the UK initially. So fastest known time for national trails.
Brilliant.
And one which is, mate, it's fantastic because you can do it anytime you want. You don't need to have, a full event there. And then you can just go and go and take it on when you're ready. So the one that I'll be taking on is the Ridgeway, which is just a couple of miles away from where I live, and it's 87 miles in total. Current record is 15 hours and 6 minutes. That's an unsupported attempt.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they did it. It's fantastic. And we penciled in for my attempt to do it on the 25th of July.
Oh, brilliant.
So it is great because we've got something to work towards and we're looking to get the record. But due to the injury, we're thinking we will probably need to push that back to the back end of August, as we're very conscious also that we need a certain amount of light to be able to perform at the quickest, during the time that you're on your feet. Now, if you start in the dark or you end in the dark, you are slowing yourself down because your brain's working on other things other than just running quick. So if the injury doesn't heal in time for them, end of July, then it'll be postponed, unfortunately, to next year. But I'll be supporting, my fellow runner in his attempt to do FKTs in the UK.
Yeah.
And I'll also be supporting him next year over in America, where he's looking to take on one of the largest trails.
It's right. Once I've stopped recording this, Dicksy, I'm going to ask you more about this because I've got to know what you're talking about. But as frustrating as it is for the listeners, I can understand you can't talk about it until it's all signed, sealed, and ready to go. But how exciting is that?
It's brilliant, and I think just touching back on where I was in 2012, from absolutely hating running and never doing it, to it now being what I want it to be, which is my life. I'm now talking about pushing my body through 87 miles in less than 15 hours. Hopefully 13 would be ideal. And that journey's just brilliant. And with the trail running, you don't know what you can do until you get out there, until you put one foot into the other and you test yourself. And you just don't know. And I feel there's so much more that everyone can do and that I can do. And I've not hit that point yet where I'm like, flipping out. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do it again. And I just want to see how far this body can be pushed. And this is only the start of the journey. I'm really excited to what we can do.
Well, you've got so much appetite for it, Dicksy, and in like the times that I've seen you out on the trail, I don't know if I've ever seen someone thrive in the way that you do. Like, you'll come running past. Every photo I've got of you is a grin on your face, or you cheering, or in some way, acting up and showing off and having a great time, because you always seem to have the energy to spare to do that when you come howling past on the trail, even if the person who came through just before you looked like they've been shot. Yeah, and it stands you in good stead.
I know that's an interesting point there, Will. You've got sort of effort level of when you're running. So, I'd definitely say don't be tied to a heart rate monitor. And if your heart rate goes above zone 1 or zone 2 into zone 3, it's not a stress. The heart rate zones will mix and they'll move about as you're going uphill and downhill. But training to an effort level to what you think is comfortable. And that effort level will be dictated in speed sessions or hill sessions or long slow sessions. I think sometimes the reason I have the energy is just because the effort level that I was running at, I chose to run at for the ice. It was a comfortable effort level, and so I'm always smiling because I just don't feel like I've pushed hard, but I don't feel I've got more to give. If that makes any sense.
No, I really think it does. It does. You've trained and prepared to a point where you know that you can be quite comfortable at the effort level that's required of you to get through the ice ultra as fast as you did, and that's brilliant. That's a testament to how much work you did on the run into that event. Speaking of, training and stuff, obviously you started out life as a PT. Is part of this change towards, running being a career for you, that you're going to be doing some more coaching yourself going forwards?
So in 21, Will, I'm looking to launch my coaching business. Lots to do yet, some really exciting things and features and benefits that we're going to have with the coaching. So I can't really go into too much detail. As I said, there's lots to do. But yeah, come 21, there'll be a nice launch. Perhaps even to a certain extent, I could work with you guys. We'll see. Can't say too much. But yeah, lots to come, and delighted to share how I've got to where I've got and how I can help other people achieve things, which actually everything's achievable. And don't have that attitude of I can't do it. Yes, you can. With the right structure, anybody can do anything. So I'm going to be bringing my passion, my love, my excitement for what I do, into my business, which I'm extremely looking forward to.
Well, mate, the mentality that you bring to your ultra running, if you can make half of your enthusiasm rub off on your clients, then you'll do well as a coach. You absolutely will. And I think that's why I wanted to sort of bring up your burgeoning career as a runner a little bit, because I just think it's a really interesting journey to, if you can plot those points right back in 2012 in Vienna, thinking, well, I've made a terrible mistake, I'm never going to do this again. And that's going to appeal to people that are wanting to get into running, because there's this idea that elite runners, even in the field of sort of trail running and ultra running, are these people that are just machines built for sports and stuff. And actually, no, they'll have gone into this in just as flawed and circuitous a way as everybody else. And yeah, I think you'll have a great time, mate. I think you're going to really enjoy the coaching as much as you enjoy the running.
Oh, that's great to hear. And sort of, I'm helping some just friends at the moment to sort of see how we get on, and
guinea
got
pigs.
A common goal of doing doing a half marathon. And I'm sat there thinking the biggest achievement that I can get is getting my guys through this half marathon.
Yeah,
and that fills me with so much passion and excitement, and as you say, it rubs off, and it's going to be good. So whether it's half marathon, ultra, multi-stage, Dicksy's coming for you.
Yeah, brilliant. And all right, Dicksy's coming for you. What's the big race? Is there a race that's just on your bucket list? Maybe not. I've already got it planned for next year or whatever. Just if you could do any one, where would you be?
Can I have two?
Go on. That's fine. You can be greedy.
So second place is the Western States 100.
Yeah.
I watched a fantastic YouTube video called Unbreakable, which if nobody's seen it, I'd highly recommend watching it. It goes back to, I think, 2010 with Anton Kapritsa, Gillian Cornett, I think that's how you pronounce his name, and Jeff Rose Racing. And it is, well, if you've not seen it, watch it. Unbreakable Western States. And that got me into wanting to do that race, because it just looked amazing. And then the number one spot, which will be a despair to my wife, and there's already been some chat of it in a WhatsApp group to the guys in the Jungle and Ice, is taking on the Barkley Marathons.
Yeah.
So it's a little way off yet, but we're just finding the journey that we need to go on to get to that point, the races we need to do to get to that point, the training we need to do to get to that point, as I think it would probably be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I can't see Mrs. Dix letting me back second year running, so...
You're going to have to nail it first time.
Gonna have to nail it first time. But that said, look at the history of it. It is incredibly difficult. So I think I will go into that with a mind of, racing to compete, which is competing in that event is finishing, obviously, and then just see what happens. But that's probably, I don't want to put a time on it. We're talking a couple of years, not too far away, but not too close.
Oh, mate. I really hope I get to follow you doing that race. That'd be amazing. And you need to go back and listen to our last episode. I interviewed Laz last week.
Wow.
Yeah.
I certainly will then. Any tips to find out how that application process works? I'll be...
it's all very dark and mysterious, mate. Even after having talked to him, I'm not sure I'd know exactly where to start. But yeah, I think that's going to be half the fun for you. Well...
Absolutely.
Simon, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. It's always a good laugh talking to you, and it's much appreciated.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Will. And that this whole thing started with you guys, and very excited to see actually what more can happen. With you guys, as I really am fond of Beyond the Ultimate, and Mate, you're growing as well as I am. So it's a nice journey that we can both be on.
Absolutely, it is, and honestly, mate, I say this hand on heart. It's a privilege to have been there and seen that light bulb moment out in the jungle where you're like, bloody hell, I can actually do this. I'm going to go for this, and then watching you win the Ice Ultra, it's been a pleasure, pal. Absolute pleasure.
Oh. Well, thanks for having me. Pleasure getting to know you guys, and look forward to being at start line in the not too distant future of one of your races again.